Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Dev. Today we're continuing work on our clone of a Vlambeer game that hasn't even been released yet. Now last time we finished up the enemy roster with the additions of remaining enemies and their special projectiles. We also added the bigger variations of the enemies and their attacks as well. But along the way we made some mistakes. So today we'll be fixing those mistakes first, but after we've righted our wrongs, we'll start working on the quote-unquote gestation portion of the game. We'll be sure to add both the normal and boss variations of the gray blobs. Sounds like a plan, so let's get to the coding. First up was fixing a few mix-ups made during the last episode. The yellow enemy actually spawns a diamond-shaped projectile, which seems to behave like a normal projectile with no additional behavior. So that's what I went with. I also decided not to delete the quote-unquote wrong attacks we ended up building. I think there still might be some use for them later. Wink. Next, it was time to fix the blue enemy. Originally, I didn't think it fired anything, but actually it's responsible for spawning the homing projectiles. And yes, it seems I also mistook them for having two phases. I blame the screen shake for these mix-ups. Anyway, now that our errors of the past are fixed, we could finally move on to the new stuff. For lack of a better theme, I went with the quote-unquote gestation to describe the whole gut system. I started with the basic gray goo, which spawns normal enemies, and I named it simply egg. Now what I needed to figure out was how I was going to spawn the eggs in. From what I could gather from watching IGN's footage is that the eggs tend to spawn as close to the middle of the board as possible. This took a bit of thinking. I first thought about doing something convoluted, but eventually realized there was a much more simple solution. I'd spawn eggs in the middle of the board regardless if something exists there or not. From there, I'd do a collision check, and if something currently exists in that spot, I'd move the egg in a random direction until it's in an empty space. I'm more than positive that this method has an actual name, but whatever it's called, the method worked like a charm, and I was able to spawn in eggs much like seen in the footage. So now that we had placement working, I added a state that the eggs would switch to in order to start sucking up guts. And based on the type of egg it was, either a normal egg or a boss egg, would require different amounts of guts before they would quote-unquote hatch. And once they've reached their required amount of guts, the egg is destroyed and outspawns the determined enemy in its place. And the way things are determined is simple. Eggs that spawn as a type of 0 are normal eggs, and their determined enemy can be any of the normal enemy types. However, if an egg is anything above 0, that means it's a boss. I used arrays to help the egg determine which sprites to use and which bosses to spawn when it hatches. And when said bosses spawn, they delete smaller enemies around them to make way for their larger sizes. And thus our eggs were ready for action. As a way to top things off for this session, I tried adding the quote-unquote suck effect to the eggs, but judging from the results, I'm gonna have to come back to it because it's less of a suck and more of a blow, or crying, or something that's not sucking. But our struggles with sucking aside, we are this much closer to recreating Vlambeer's prototype. We've still got a few bells and whistles to add, which we'll hopefully finish up in possibly the finale for this little clone project. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Let's Dev. So remember that if you like this video or enjoy Let's Dev in general, be sure to hit that like button. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And as always, be sure to leave your thoughts on our progress in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.